Today, on Guess What I Found Out, we are going to talk about great white sharks in the Gulf of Mexico. Which, if you grew up on the Gulf Coast being told that great whites were a Pacific and Atlantic problem and you were safe to wade fish in peace, is information that will rearrange your whole sense of personal security. Great white sharks, or as I prefer to call them, the grey-suited ocean accountants, have a reputation problem. Thanks to a certain 1975 film, most people picture them exclusively as residents of cold, grey, dramatic water, stalking New England beaches or California coastlines. The Gulf of Mexico, warm and green and full of shrimp boats, did not really fit the brand. And so, for decades, the working assumption was that great whites just did not go there. That assumption, it turns out, was wrong. Quite specifically and dramatically wrong. Let us start with the old evidence, because it goes back further than you might think. A 1963 book called Shadows in the Sea. Sharks, skates and rays documented great white sightings in the Western Gulf dating to the 1950s. Contemporary newspaper accounts described catches as man-eaters, which was the era's charming way of saying great white. In 1984, a commercial longliner working off the Chandeleur Islands between Venice, Louisiana and Biloxi, Mississippi, spotted a 16 to 18-foot specimen described as very fat, cruising the swells. The person who saw it had 50 years of Gulf experience and had never seen anything like it. These accounts were largely dismissed. Fishermen seeing things. Gulf legends. Move along. Then, in 2005, Captain Ryan Warola was fishing 68 nautical miles off the Texas-Louisiana border near Sabine Pass. He was working near an oil rig, which concentrates prey and attracts large predators, when something hit his chum Slick and would not leave. He described the shark as larger than anything he had seen except a whale shark. Distinctive triangular teeth. Classic dorsal fin profile. Not a tiger, not a hammerhead, not anything he had seen in Gulf waters before. He eventually confirmed the identification with journalist Chester Moore, who had spent years documenting exactly these kinds of reports. And then, shortly after Hurricane Katrina, a Wade fisherman encountered what he described as a Cadillac-sized great white in shallow water, initially written off as a tiger shark. Written off, that is, until the tagging data started coming in. If this story is giving you the same unsettled feeling it gave me, go ahead and follow the channel. We cover wildlife and science and nature, and well, occasionally we deliver news that makes you reassess every Gulf wade fishing trip you have ever taken. Here is where things get genuinely extraordinary. In December 2023, a 14-foot female great white was caught and tagged off South Carolina. She was named LeeBeth, after the late daughter of the captain who helped tag her. LeeBeth was fitted with 4 separate tracking devices, including a camera tag on her dorsal fin, the first of its kind deployed in southeast US waters, which recorded 10 hours of her actual behavior from her own perspective. On February 24th, 2024, LeeBeth pinged 100 yards from the beach at South Padre Island, Texas. 100 yards from a Texas beach, in water that, culturally speaking, was not supposed to have great white sharks in it. Her route was, well, essentially a complete lap of the southeastern United States and the Gulf of Mexico. She went south from South Carolina, down along Florida's coast, through the Keys, into the Gulf, past New Orleans, all the way to South Padre Island, and then into Mexican waters, which, by the way, made her the farthest west great white ever tracked for the species. Then she headed back north through Florida, up toward Cape Cod for the summer, took a little detour to the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and, well, last contact was in October. That is not a lost shark. That is a shark that knows exactly where it is going and has probably been doing this or something remarkably similar for a very long time. What LeeBeth confirmed is not just that great whites visit the Gulf, but that the Gulf is actually part of a deliberate, extensive migration pattern. Her journey crossed US borders into international and Mexican waters, which honestly is a bit of a conservation headache for researchers who are trying to protect a species that frankly does not recognize jurisdictions. And LeeBeth is not alone. According to data from OCEARCH and the Atlantic White Shark Conservancy, 57 out of 92 tagged Western North Atlantic great whites entered the Gulf of Mexico. That's more than half, evenly split across sex and age groups, from young-of-year sharks to full adults. Before you close the browser and never wade fish again, let us put this in some perspective. Great whites in the Gulf are not common. They are occasional, purposeful visitors passing through a migration corridor. The sharks that actually dominate Gulf waters are bull sharks, which are euryhaline, meaning they can move between saltwater and freshwater, and which are legitimately responsible for most near-shore incidents. The grey-suited ocean accountant is passing through on business. The bull shark lives there. Now is the time to drop your answer in the comments. If you knew there were great whites cruising through Gulf of Mexico waters right now, does that change how you feel about the Gulf? Does it make you more excited? Less? Tell me your reaction and explain your reasoning. I want to know where Gulf Coast people land on this one. Here is the part of this story that I find genuinely moving. Great white populations crash badly from decades of recreational trophy fishing, an 80% decline. These are animals with 70-plus year lifespans that do not reproduce until their 20s or 30s and produce only a few large pups per litter. When you knock down a population like that, it takes a very long time to come back. After 20 years of legal protection across the United States, Mexico, South Africa, and Australia, there are signs of recovery. LeeBeth is a sign of recovery. The 57 tagged sharks entering the Gulf are a sign of recovery. The fact that we spent decades not knowing great whites were in the Gulf is itself a data point about how little we understood their range, their behavior, and their role in that ecosystem. The more we tag, the more we realize how wrong the old assumptions were. These animals are not confined to the Hollywood coasts. They go where the ocean takes them, and the Gulf of Mexico is part of their ocean. Subscribe to Guess What I Found Out, Curious George. We are here every time the science tells us something that makes the world feel bigger and stranger than we thought. And I will see you on the next one.